Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Trending in Hollywood. I am Scott Menzel, happily joined by Demetri Panos.
And happily to be here, joined by you, Mister Big Shot. You had an amazing week. You had an amazing week this week. So I know you won't toot your own horn, so I'll do it for you. And I do this more as a friend because I'm really proud of you. You did this. We're doing this first ever, hopefully to be an annual Hollywood Critics Association television award show. And we did the nominations yesterday, which you put together this great show. And we got first time ever in Deadline Hollywood articles. And it was really great. Really, yeah, it really made me think, why did they end up putting me on as a member? Like, this is too good. It's too big. But I'm proud to have been a part of the nominating process. I can't wait to vote. It was really fantastic. So good job and congratulations for Hollywood Critics Association and all the nominees who seem to be more than appreciative about the feat.
I appreciate that, Demetri. It's always a little surreal when stuff like this happens, just to be honest with everyone. I've been working in this industry for 20 years, never full-time. As much as it may seem that I'm doing this stuff full-time, it's never been full-time. And, after 16 years to kind of launch an organization and sort of see it start building momentum and word of mouth, and every time we do another show, it sort of gets more and more out there. And the response yesterday was just, no other words, surreal. It was just a surreal experience to kind of see everyone embracing this, and I'm happy to do it. And I think this is, we as an organization represent a new era in Hollywood. We're a new phase in Hollywood. And I know a lot of things that we do are unconventional. I realize I had a conversation with someone today about how dare you split up the TV into streaming and cable and network. And my response to that is...
How dare you, Scott?
I mean,
how dare you?
How dare you?
I raise my fist to you.
I mean, the reality of it is that there's thousands of television shows each year being produced. Mm-hmm. And when you have Netflix, who can literally have an award show just on their own with all the content they pour out, and then you have FX and ABC and NBC and not CBS All Access, Paramount Plus and Peacock and all these things. To me, the only way to give credit where credit is due is to expand.
You have to.
Award shows were made, and what people don't seem to understand is award shows were made when there was 5 television channels. Like, they started when there was ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Like, and I don't know, whatever the CW was, like, it went from WB to all these different versions. And you didn't have HBOs and Showtimes when this started, and Cinemax and Stars and TBS. Well, and that started happening.
Yeah, and don't forget, though, Scott, for a very short period, there was something called the Cable Ace Awards. Remember those back in the I think that was in the late 80s and 90s. I'd have to research the dates, but I remember the Cable Ace Awards. But that was kind of funny because, albeit there were a lot of cable channels on because cable had made a big splash and it was getting bigger and bigger, but it was HBO that was winning them all because, quite frankly, they did have the best series back then for all that. But that kind of morphed into something else. And in today's landscape of television and how it is consumed, it only makes sense to separate that. I can't believe that somebody tried to dress you down after, see, that person's just no good.
Maybe the person didn't think of it from the outside perspective. I mean, that's the benefit. And I explained it to them. the reason why we approach it this way. But I mean, in my opinion, if you're going drama, let's just take a category like drama.
Yeah.
You put a show like Law and Order up against a show like The Crown. It's an unfair advantage.
It's very unfair. And you're right. And what it does, though, too, Scott, is it doesn't give something like Law and Order like that edge, because that's the thing. Once you start doing, it's like, remember when HBO started winning all these Emmys? Because they were clearly making something unique, different, that people wanted to watch. And they were like just crushing the networks. Because the networks don't have that, for lack of better words, freedom to make an R-rated show. They can't have the topics that Dream On took on, or Sex in the City. They can't do that. And it really is an unfair, like, the networks, no offense, are kind of kneecapped. You know, they're all, in a sense, we've got a little bit more loose on topics that the networks can do, but they just don't compare to what HBOs of the world do. And now even a lot of the streaming shows like Cruel Summer, even Ted Lasso, as sweet, charming, heartwarming, and so optimistic as it is, without some swearing, it loses a little bit of its bite. Because the swearing is never like really malicious. It's just part of the cadence. It's hard to compare. And I agree 100%. You do have to separate them. And you have to have, when you're doing competitiveness, you kind of have to have them. You have to have apples to apples in comparisons, because otherwise other shows are just going to get, who could be deserving of an award, are just going to get crushed. Just because of their limitations, I guess, for lack of better words.
I think it's not. I mean, I think it expands even further than that. I think it's the production design, it's the production value, it's the budgets. I mean, like, one episode of The Crown probably costs the same amount as like the entire season of something. I don't know, like probably Cruel Summer. In all fairness, like, it probably costs the same amount of money for one episode as opposed for the whole season.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And they have, right, like you were saying, not only about cursing, but the restrictions of like having to appeal to a wider demographic, right? So like, there's so much programming on streamers and HBOs and cable networks that are, for lack of a better term, like niche marketplaces, right? They're like, they're in a very specific market and they're going after. So you can have a show like Atypical on Netflix that showcases what it's like to be a high schooler with autism. But that playing out does not have the same effect of something like a Speechless that was on ABC. The production value is different. The topics being explored are much more realistic in Atypical than they are in that, because they're not held back by worrying about, oh, we have to keep this like PG to PG-13, where Netflix allows them to go full R if they need to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so to me, that's a disadvantage to the networks.
It is.
So you have to play in the same pond. So it makes a 100% sense that network shows go up against network shows and streaming shows go up against streaming shows. You get it. And it gives you a better field of vision too. And it gives people who might be the audience who would watch our show to go, oh, I can pay attention to this network show. It fairly promotes each platform and how that content is digested from an audience, because again, there's no like quote unquote sitcom on streaming, right? There are half-hour shows, right? But it's hard because we look at sitcoms as We look at sitcoms as with laugh tracks and things like that. I know things have changed somewhat, but when you look at the half-hour shows, like, I mean, there are some heavy dramas that I wouldn't consider as a sitcom that are about half-hour, 40 minutes that are on streaming, that they don't do that on a network. So, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's all good stuff, so.
Oh, I agree. And we'll move on right now. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Congratulations to all the nominees. We're happy to have you. We're happy to get to celebrate this wide scope of content. I think that's really important. Again, to celebrate smaller shows like Mr. Mayor include shows like The Boys and Mayor of Easttown and stuff like that. Like there's places for everyone, right? And again, tying into the whole entire messaging of the HCA brand is inclusivity. And inclusivity is acknowledging things across all levels and across all platforms. And, people get so caught up with just the black and white argument of that, but there's so much more to the word inclusion. And that's being celebrating everything and everyone. So thank you again, Demetri, for that kind words.
Well, it's trending in Hollywood, literally. When you're on a page of Deadline Hollywood, I mean, that's trending. So,
appreciate that. Yeah. All right, where should we start today? We got about 50 minutes, and we got a lot to go through.
Yes.
Gosh, let's pick up where we left off last week. So obviously, we talked one of the final topics last week. We talked about the Tomorrow War. And this movie, Demetri did not like Tomorrow War. I did not care for Tomorrow War, but somehow Tomorrow War is getting a sequel, which is interesting. Not like our opinions mean all the world, but I'm just wondering how a movie that costs $200 million on streaming gets a $200 million plus sequel. So I don't know.
I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. It's not a particularly good movie. You understand why Paramount unloaded this movie.
Yes.
I did anyways after watching it. And I'm like going, God, this isn't... There's a great concept in there. That's for sure. The execution is... Woof! It was just... it just got... They can't even... The way we talked about this and the way that it was written, look, I shouldn't be coming up with solutions easier than the characters in the movie who are supposed to be scientists. I mean, it's just, this shouldn't be happening. And when I'm going, but wait a minute, did you forget that you're dealing with time travel? Why are we spending all this time and all this faux drama? Well, why don't you just do A? Or why don't you just do B? That was a script that needed a little bit more baking in the oven, so to speak. They needed more people to read it and make it tighter. And perhaps it could have gone to perhaps it could have been a theatrical. But as is, I don't get it. To be talking about a sequel, okay, people are going to get paid and... Who knows who's going to watch it?
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's just not a good movie.
I mean, I don't really understand it either, to be honest with you. I when I watched this movie, I was kind of like, this belongs on streaming. And I was just sort of like, why? I understand, like you said, why someone dumped this. To me, that made sense. And... it's weird because it's the script and it's also, to me, the visual effects. Like when you watch a movie that supposedly has a $200 million budget, right? Yeah. I expect effects that mirror like an Avengers Endgame, a Jurassic World, something along those lines. I thought the special effects in this movie were worse than the special effects in that Power Ranger reboot movie from Lionsgate a couple years ago. Which
I remember.
That one, like, I feel like they spent. I don't know where the budget went on that one either because of the special effects. I felt like those were like
Lionsgate, so it was like $6.
Yeah, I mean, but I felt like that was like something where you could have gave it to the CW team and they could have produced a
Sure.
better movie, which is how I kind of felt about the visuals in this movie. I felt like the visuals in this movie felt like a made for TV movie or TV show.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
what kind of, if this was something that had a budget of like 50 to 60 million, I would understand it because I think it's good enough for the platform that it's on. I think it's good entertainment. I mean, it's turn your brain off type stuff. But I agree with you too. It's like the writing needed more sharper dialogue. It had to have more thought behind it. It felt like a rough draft instead of a final draft.
It really did. It was like a first pass on a script. And I have to say that it did not make the performances
No.
look good. I mean, I thought the performances, it was the first time that I looked at Chris Pratt going, he can't do this. He can't pull this off. And it was because in part of the script, but yeah, I just felt this was not a fantastic showcase. Had I seen this in a theater, it would have made me angry. I would have given it the finger for sure. When you watch it on Amazon Prime, you're like, okay, yeah, whatever, you know. So, but sequel,
Yeah.
sequel,
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't care. State Farm. What's his name?
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. You know, I mean, he phoned it in. I was like, oh sure, I'll show up, whatever. What's the paycheck? Okay, yeah. I have, I take care of my kids. I have a family to take care of. It just was it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. So
No,
I don't get
no.
it. I don't get a sequel. But hey, God bless them. It'll be great for streaming.
Oh, speaking of something that we waited 10 years for, Black Widow. Black Widow is finally in theaters after a pandemic and multiple release date delays. I mean, we really do. Like, I hope people realize when you watch this show, we're not trying to be the bad guys here. We're not trying to, shit on movies or shit on TV shows or whatever it is. We really pride ourselves in being open and honest about things. And when we love something, you obviously can tell we love them. And when we don't like something, we're going to not sugarcoat that either. So be forewarned as we start this conversation.
Yeah.
So,
it's going to sting.
Yeah, it's going to sting a little bit. So Demetri and I saw Black Widow together, and honestly, I always loved Scarlett Johansson in this role. I feel like she deserved a great standalone movie, and after waiting 10 years, I was hoping we were going to get one. Long story short, we didn't. It basically uses her as a secondary character to set up the future MCU installments. And I know people are like, oh, blah, 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 but what do you expect? The character's dead. And I'm like, yeah, but the way that the movie plays out, it happens before some of these other movies. So there was enough there that I think you could have gave her a proper standalone film and then maybe done a sequel that you can focus on building the family and kind of making that a lead into one of your Disney Plus shows. But I think that's what the biggest slap in the face was to me as a fan of Scarlett Johansson and this character. And then you just sort of have this weird mix of characters that feel like they're in different movies. Like David Harbour in this movie feels so out of place. Like if he was in Guardians of the Galaxy, I would be like, okay, right. I David Harbour in this. Yes. But David Harbour in this movie, in Black Widow, I'm kind of like, what is going on? Yeah. And these villains, these shoestring villains, one of which feels exactly like Harvey Weinstein, like reimagined. And then you have a very famous villain like Taskmaster, who is just completely wasted in this movie. And I just don't know what to say about it other than what everyone else is saying, which is the only positive that I will give this, is that I think Florence Pugh is good. I mean, I wouldn't say she's great. I've seen some crazy stuff on the internet about Oscar campaigns. Like, get the hell out of here. Like, what are we talking about? Like, you guys are crazy. Anyone who thinks that she has an Oscar chance for this performance is completely out of their mind. I know that sounds extreme, but like, again, 20 years worth of experience in this industry, you have to know how to like look at things and realize like this has not a chance in hell of getting nominated for an award. Maybe a Critics' Choice Super Duper Award, but that's about it. That's like the only thing it can be nominated for.
A Saturn Award, perhaps.
Yes, a Saturn Award.
And I'm not knocking Saturn Awards or anything.
No. Of course, there's a place. Again, what we talked about earlier. There's a place for it. If you're doing a genre award, yes, I can see it. But when you're looking at a Golden Globe, well, we can't talk about Golden Globes. Golden Globes no more, or at least for a while.
How dare you, Scott?
An Academy Award. You're going to have all these great performances in the next couple of months coming out. And to think that to even think that anyone from this movie, whether or not you love this movie or not, it just seems like very, I don't know, misdirected, misguided.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I'm only going to add to, yes, I too is a fan of this Black Widow character since her first appearance in Iron Man 2. I was looking forward to this movie. I always believed that the character kind of deserved her own spinoff, and I had hoped that we would have gotten it, before Endgame. They had a very difficult task. We know that Natalia Romanoff was somewhat of a tortured character. We'd seen that, and you got hints of it. So when they make this movie, I was really hoping to get to the drama of it all, but it all plays out like a tossed out script of James Bond. It was as if the writers of this looked through the trash bins of the broccoli estate and go, okay, so this is a script about. So this is a thrown away script from James Bond. And I do hear many comparisons to James Bond. I just assume watch A View to a Kill. The villain, to your point, was this, what was his name? Drakov? It was a horrible villain. This Taskmaster was such a anticlimactic waste of a talent. The person, Taskmaster, Olga Kurylenko, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You took one of the most beautiful women and talented. I think she's a talented woman, a Bond woman, in fact, and you gave her nothing to do other than you made her look ugly. There's no sympathy for the character. Nothing. It was such a waste. Furthermore, you talk about David Harbour. He's just basically Mr. Incredible with a Russian accent. And the Russian accents in this movie really bothered me too, because they were so off, and it just seemed, but this dialogue isn't funny. Well, when you say it in a Russian accent, it'll be a scream. You just wait. The audiences are going to love it. Not the case for me. And David, I didn't get this family dynamic, Scott, from the get-go. I didn't know who this guy was. I didn't, there was no real backstory to him at all. One of my favorite parts of watching the movie with you is about halfway through the movie, Scott, you leaned over to me and said, there really is no reason for this. You said, for this movie to exist. And I had to agree with you. I was trying to figure it out myself, being, number one, it was a disservice to the character of Black Widow. Because in the end of the day, it wasn't about her. The action I found to be rip-off ripoff and so cliche that I've seen it done better in other movies. But my biggest slap in the face about this movie, Scott, was what its intent was. And I'm gonna talk about the button. To me, it's very important. All the buttons to the Marvel movies have, they show Easter eggs. They give you a glimpse of the content that's going to be upcoming, whether it's for a movie that's coming out a couple of months away or whether it's something for a movie for the following year. It gave fan fodder, and some of it was fun, but it gave you a glimpse of what to come from the cinematic universe. This movie comes out, and at the end of the movie, you know entirely what the intent of this movie is for, and it is to promote the Hawkeye streaming show on Disney Plus, which is coming out, I don't know, in a couple of months or whatever. And I found that to be the biggest insult, and more to the point that this wasn't about Black Widow. This was about promoting. It was a 2.5 hour advertisement and prologue for you to watch a Disney Plus streaming show. To me, that was insulting. And to me, that just, you don't do that. You can set up your phase 4. I mean, why couldn't you do something about Thor, which they're filming and they're saying it's going really well, or just talk about something? But really, 2.5 hours? You spent 2.5 hours for, you focused the character, you shifted the focus of the character to Florence Pugh's character, and now it's a 2.5 hour promo for Hawkeye. I just found that unconscionable. Let's talk the action for a second. I'm kind of getting tired of I'm going to base jump without a shoot, without anything, and act like it's no big thing. And, free fall without any sense of danger. It's another thing that really bothered me about the movie. I felt no sense of danger for any of them. You know that Black Widow isn't going to die in this movie because of Endgame.
Right.
So she's going to get out of it. So, but I'm really getting tired of there really was no sense of danger at all. When you look at Star Trek, the 2009 J.J. Abrams one, when they did that Halo jump, right, to get onto this mining platform, like, there were stakes. And people died, and they had suits on, for crying out loud. When you look at what happened in Mission Impossible 6, when you look at that, which was filmed in real time, very little to no special effects were done. Like, that is edge of your seat action and adventure. And when Henry Cavill gets hit by lightning, like, you understand why he can't open his chute, and Ethan Hunt's got to go and, like, rescue him. Like, that is fantastic action. Here, we see Black Widow jumping off this thing, and she's, like, dodging debris, and this, like, oh, okay, this is normal. We can do it's almost like going into Fast and Furious kind of territory. And I'm seeing this a lot in movies. Even James Bond did this when Bond was pushed out of an airplane without a chute by Jaws. And he's got to figure out, how the hell do I land? And there's a big fight scene in the air, a big fight sequence with James Bond and Richard Kyle as Jaws. That's more exciting because there's danger. I always knew that Black Widow was going to come out of everything unscathed, and there's so much self-assurance that, there's one thing to believe that a man can fly, but that's Superman. That's not Black Widow. And the action I found to be awful too, and I really felt bad for the character of Black Widow. She deserved a far better send-off than this movie ever gives her.
Oh, I agree, and I think, listen, I don't disagree with you about the sense of suspense. Like, there is no sense of suspense in this movie, because everything's going to work out just fine. Because, again, this is always my problem with a lot of the Marvel stuff, is that there's so much planning and reveals. Like,
Sure.
20 movies and 20 TV shows ahead that I guess because I'm not like as hardcore of a fan as others, that I never feel that emotional impact that way that a lot of people seem to feel when they watch these movies, because the cynical person in me goes, well, of course Spider-Man's not dead. He has 5 movies coming out in the next 3 years. So you sort of like, I guess in the moment you're supposed to forget about that. But I always feel like these movies are always selling me on the next one. So that I never feel that sense of a standalone, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that I really always appreciated about the DC stuff, is that when I was watching a DC movie, I love the fact, and this is even going back to the 80s with like Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah.
Like it felt like a complete movie that if we didn't get Batman Returns, that was okay. Like we literally got a great Batman movie. And I feel like, I know we love this world building and franchise building and stuff like that, but sometimes, and I guess when you do it too much, it's for me personally, and I understand that you and I right now are in the minority on this, but to me, I think this is going to eventually catch up with people, where people are going to eventually say to themselves, okay, I know this is what's coming next. I know what's coming, because you sort of see it in a weird way with the TV. It's funny when you shift to a different medium, right? So you had people who were so in love with WandaVision, right? That was like, oh, WandaVision, best show. Oh my God. And then you had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? And then it was sort of like this weird, for the first time in a very long time, where you heard this, it's not really that great. I'm not really interested. A lot of people I actually even know said that they stopped watching it, which is like kind of like, what? You stopped watching something Marvel related, and yet they're building this world that are supposed to be interconnected. And if you don't watch all of Falcon Winter Soldier, am I going to be able to understand what happens 3 movies from now? Who knows? We don't know. But they seem to always be interconnected, and I think by expanding this much, they might start hurting themselves.
Furthermore, Scott, taking this point is like the next generation of moviegoers and movie lovers, they're going to have a whole hell of a lot of content to bring in to figure out what the hell they're doing. That's the thing. They've become, look, number one, I've praised Marvel in the past for at least mapping things out. Feige and crew have done an amazing job from their phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. And making sure that it's this universe and how it interconnects and how the characters will end up interconnecting and how the Avengers become the Avengers and whatever conflict and strife has been in there. And they've done that like to amazing success. And I'm not talking box office wise. I really am talking from a narrative perspective. We've never encountered anything like this. Even James Bond movies, rarely do they ever connect. They're for the most part single entities, right? So the world building they've done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is exemplary, but now we're getting so well into the weeds that to introduce somebody into the Marvel Universe, that's a lot of content to digest, to bring in. And then there are, well, which way do I watch these movies? Do I watch them the way that they were released in theaters, or do I have to start off with Captain America First Avenger, and then I have to pay attention to the buttons and figure out, do I watch this movie next, this movie? It's really confusing. And if you're a kid who's a comic book fan, they'll understand, but it's just so much content. And then you throw in the television shows, which now are interconnected. And to me, I don't mind if the television show is connected to phase 4. I do mind when the movies now connect to television shows. Like, to me, that's a problem. And what are you doing? Like, this makes no sense. I don't want to sit through a 2.5-hour prologue to a television series. I just don't. I want you to promote the movies and tell it. Like, even the X-Men, not X-Men, forgive me, like things like X-Files or even Star Trek The Next Generation, right? They were leaving. They were getting off of their series run, and they were using that to leap onto the big screen. Don't leap me from a big screen to the small screen and say this is okay. Because what if I hadn't watched that small screen show yet? I don't know what the hell that button means and why. And wasn't this supposed to be about Black Widow? Not about Hawkeye and Florence Pugh's character. You brought up a great point like 3 weeks ago, shortly after or before we watched the movie. Look, folks, I'm not giving away any huge spoiler. Just go on to IMDb and look up Florence Pugh. Yeah. She's listed in the credits for Hawkeye.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like, okay, here we go. This is great. You made a very mediocre movie with substandard type of action. You made it explode. Boom. Yeah, we had great explosions. And also, if I see that headlock, that leaping headlock throwdown kick again, it was great when Scarlett Johansson did it. This time, look, if that's your thing, you're going to love this movie because it's done like 100 times. If you love slow motion of characters either walking or running away from big fireball explosions, you're going to love this movie because it's in there. Again, I've seen all the action done far better in other movies with far better narratives. So, yeah, the movie made me very angry, if you couldn't tell.
Yes, I could. But real quick, I mean, it's going to be our Lord and Savior this weekend, right? At the box office, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be our Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
I mean, the preview numbers are really good. I mean,
13 million. Yep, not too shabby for a Thursday night. Absolutely.
This is the week I've been waiting for in a lot of ways, because I am so interested to see how the Disney Plus reports happen on Monday and how the box office reports happen. And I'm wondering how much money comes out of both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, but to me, I think the more important weekend is next weekend.
Oh, well, it's to see how much it holds on.
Yes. I sent you, and Jesus, we could do a whole show on this. I sent you what I believe to be some really good comps on this, and that being Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel.
Yes.
And I gave you a range of percent drops. It's going to be fascinating to see what the actual percentage drops are for Black Widow. We are putting so much time and attention into opening weekends. We talked about this about F9. F9 fell out of space.
Yeah, it did. It really did.
And it became debris in its second weekend. And that wasn't on a streaming platform. It will be very interesting to see the hold that Black Widow has next weekend. That's the weekend that I'm paying attention to. I'm looking forward to a movie that has legs of, say, Godzilla vs. Kong, which had legs. It had a sustainability. It took a long time to reach 100 million, right? But I'm very, very curious to see. We already know that F9 is kind of kneecapped. I want to see what happens to Black Widow and its sustainability and its box office legs. So to speak.
I agree. I'm curious to see where it goes. It'll be an interesting next couple of weeks, especially now because we're finally at the point where I think there's a lot of content to pick from in the movie theaters.
Yes.
So you have more options. So originally when a movie came out, to me, it made it much more evident that there was zero interest or lack of interest in that, right? So when a Spiral came out, there was very little out at that time. So people didn't see that, which meant to me there was not enough interest in seeing Spiral, right? So it didn't do that well, as much as Lionsgate wants to say that it did good. I think it did average at best. But when you see A Quiet Place kind of come out and you start having some other things to compare it to, and you kind of see that it made more money than Conjuring, it goes to show you what has more interest and what's so. the next couple of weeks, as we start getting more and more titles with Snake Eyes, and we had The Purge last week, and that didn't do all that well, and Boss Baby, did pretty well considering the deal that it also had on Peacock. Like, right. It's going to be fascinating the next couple of weeks as more and more content come out. So we'll keep you posted on that.
And yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great conversation, because when you talk about Boss Baby, right, you also have to factor in how many people have Peacock, as opposed to how many people have Disney Plus, right? It's all about the subscribership. So in a sense, even though you're on Peacock, people are still kind of forced to go to a movie because they don't have Peacock. So we're living in very fascinating times, and the movie industry has obviously irreversibly changed. Whether that's for bad or for good, that's regardless.
To be decided,
I just think that we shouldn't hold up our industry standards to opening weekend. If we did this, there are so many movies that we would have not paid attention to if we didn't give them a chance to breathe at the box office more. But now more than any time that I've been doing this, and I've been in this industry for 30 plus years, not in any other time have I seen so much focus and on opening weekend, more so than anything. So that I want to see how this plays out, and other movies upcoming too. So yeah, we'll see. Monday will be interesting. Mm-hmm.
Kind of staying along the same topic. This news came out about the Universal licensing deal with Peacock.
Yep.
And this was what, 4 months right after?
4 months, yeah. Universal movies to hit Peacock 4 months after opening in theaters. So, yeah, that means movies like F9. I suppose that would fall into it. Jurassic World Dominion, is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting on two fronts. Like we just talked about, who has Peacock. So is this going to bolster
Peacock actually is doing very well, because
are they?
Peacock has
you would know more than I do.
Well, they've done very well because they also have the WWE. And that has drawn in a lot of subscribers from that. It's kind of crazy. The numbers have been really great. They're at 42 million subscribers already.
That's pretty big. Okay. All right. I sit corrected.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, I think they're really, I think Peacock is doing a great job of stepping up, not only getting exclusives by having the wrestling contract, but they're following the same a path as Apple, right? They're not overproducing a lot of things. They're sort of they're picking a couple things and they're going with it, and I feel like they're putting some push behind it. Girls 5 Eva has, it's not Ted Lasso level of success. I mean, nothing's going to be. I mean but it's sort of on that same level as Hacks, right? Where I feel like you hear enough about it. There's people talking about the show. It got renewed for a second season. They're not trying to put out 100 things. They're trying to casually build their product that they have. The Saved by the Bell reboot did really well for them, so they're probably going to do a second season of that. And I think that's the wise way if you're entering into the streaming world. You have to just get behind a group of projects and really put your money and time and the talent and push them out.
I agree.
My number one complaint about Netflix is that there's just too much. There's just too much. And it's not that I don't like a lot of Netflix content. It's just that I don't know about a lot of Netflix content, and nor do I have the time to watch most of the Netflix content because there's just too much of it. Every day I wake up, there's another press release from Netflix saying, hey, we have this movie coming out. Hey, we have this TV show coming out. And I'm like, whoa. You guys are not the only network I have. You're not the only show I watch. I need some space. I need some downtime.
And it leads to confusion. You
Yes.
don't know, like they release so much stuff, and you hear bits and pieces of the show come, and I'm like, well, wait, is that Netflix? And when you go on Netflix too, sometimes it's really hard just to find a show, and it just seems like every time I go on it, the exclusive to Netflix, it seems like it's constantly changing. And so something that I saw like on mine yesterday won't be on there today, but it'll be on yours, because it seems that each one, we're not seeing a standardized thing. Your homepage to Netflix looks different from my homepage, not just because of what you have in your queue. I don't know how that works.
It's supposed to be an algorithm that's supposed to target what you watch, but I can tell you it doesn't work because, and I'll give you a great example of this. So I've talked about how much I love the Bo Burnham special, right?
Yeah.
When that came out and I watched it, it was not anywhere to be found. I had to search for it. So
me
if they
too.
knew the fact that I watched Make Happy like 3 or 4 times, they should have been like, dude, there's a new Bo Burnham special. This guy's gonna fucking love it. Like, let's make it the first thing he sees.
Absolutely. I had a hard time finding it too.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, this is like, you're still pushing Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
And wait, I heard about the Bo Burnham special. I heard about it from you, but I did hear about it through some advertising and social media and some articles. I went on there. Where the hell is it? It was, it was a really big disservice. People obviously found it. I mean, he released an album as well, but yeah, absolutely. 100% fantastic example.
Yeah, so I think this Peacock deal is interesting because they're doing, to me, and I'm sure you love the timeline of this, right? You love the fact that it's giving it a nice full 4 months.
Absolutely.
Personally, I think it's a little too long. I think a 3-month deal probably would have been good. Just to still, as they can kind of come off the hype of the movie playing in a theater.
But again, you're talking about a lot of these, like, I mean, who knows how long F9 is going to remain in theaters and what its upcoming competition is. But, you are talking like Jurassic World and things that are going to play out. I think for streaming, look, don't forget, too, that Universal is the one that set up, what is it, a 45-day deal?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So they still have that kind of in place.
Oh, no, that's Paramount. Paramount Plus did the 45-day. Universal originally did the 21-day. Universal did the 21-day originally during the pandemic.
Right.
So I don't know what the deal. Well, obviously it's this one now. But
I guess for Peacock. So look, I still think
I love that
all the studios are learning.
Like, that's also smart on their money, right? Because
they're
like, well, if we don't make money in a movie theater, we'll get money by kicking our parent company, Peacock. So like they're sort of building their own brand internally, which I think is a smart move.
And I still think that these movies they're still going to have their Blu-ray deals, their 4K Blu-ray deals, and I believe I haven't heard anything, but they're going to have their HBO deals.
I'm sure
as well. So it's kind of like, remember what it used to be for like VHS and DVD? Like a movie would come out and it took a year before it came out in VHS.
I do.
Now it's going to be like. Now it's going to be about a year before it shows up on HBO or Showtime or whatever that cable outlet. It's going to be about a year.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because the way that the industry is evolving is that HBO is now producing more content than they ever did before. Mm-hmm. I mean, there used to be, I remember this because, again, like you said, I was a big fan of HBO programming. I'm still a big fan of HBO programming. I mean, Hacks is like one of my favorite shows. But what's different now is that when you had a Sopranos, right? Sopranos was like that big show you would wait. And then they would have one other show, right? It was almost like they only had like 2 really big shows. They would have some filler stuff like The Real Time with Bill Maher or who was the other talk show guy they had a long time ago? Dennis Leary, right? Was it Dennis Leary? Real Talk with Dennis Leary or someone like that. Anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but the point of it is that they didn't really have that many shows. But now it's like as one show ends, there's now a new show that replaces immediately.
Yep.
Which therefore means that they're making more content that is exclusive to them, which is why you're seeing these changes within the industry of getting a deal like Jurassic World not going to HBO Max first, but going to Peacock first because they want to keep it in-house and they're building their own content and their own brands.
Yeah. And to your point, though, about HBO, because I mentioned this a little bit earlier, they'd always had programming. So they were a movie cable outlet, but if you remember shows like Not Necessarily the News, they were the ones that did Tales from the Crypt, which ran for a long time. They had great shows like Marlowe, Philip Marlowe. They had awesome shows. Dream On was a great show. Then Sex and the City. They built in these series that did really good for them, and they released them in such a way that they would always block them too. Oh, and don't forget about their comedy specials. HBO's comedy specials in the day where like we were seeing A-list stand-up comedians from Robin Williams, Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, Sam Kinison, Billy Crystal. Oh my God, the Larry Sanders Show?
Yep.
They knew how to create this content and how to block it. So when that show ended, we got something else for you to watch. And they had something for everybody. You're a horror fan, we got Tales from the Crypt. You like comedy, we got all these shows. Larry Sanders, you love. Like Dream On was the opposite of like Sex and the City.
Yeah.
I mean, Dream On was a brilliant show. Tales from the Crypt, a brilliant show. Marlowe was a brilliant show. Not Necessarily the News. Brilliant show. That's why they were winning all these Cable Ace Awards. They knew, like, before anybody else to create content, and to this day they continue to do so. Sopranos, you mentioned, Game of Thrones.
But the big difference is that as the industry progresses, there's a lot of stuff on HBO that you don't know exists. That is their original programming. Because I went on it, and I'll be honest, I go through these periods where I struggle with what to watch. So I'll go on HBO Max and kind of scroll through it for like 15, 20 minutes. My wife absolutely hates it when I do it. and I'll sit there and I'll watch trailers for a bunch of the shows. I'm like, what the hell is this? I never heard of this. and then I watch the trailer and I go, maybe. I don't know. Let me see if there's anything else. Scroll. And I mention this just because of the Peacock deal, because there are more content from people like HBO that normally you would know when an HBO show was on. You would always know an HBO show. But now, again, even them, they're sort of dipping into, not as badly, but they're also dipping into, we have some of these shows that you have never heard of that you're just randomly on one day, and you're like, what is this? Okay, I'm going to try it, and then you might like it, you might not, but who knows?
Yeah. So I know, Scott, that you said you have a hard out at 12, and
I do. It's 12. So one real quick, we want to jump off this, but we have to talk about just real quick. We're going to do a tribute to Richard Donner. We're going to probably do that as a standalone show because I think we can honor his legacy in a standalone episode. Stay tuned to Twitter. We'll announce when we're doing that. But last piece of news before I jump off. Marvel and DC are not going to be at Comic-Con at home. They say no more. We don't need Comic-Con this year.
That's huge.
I feel like that's huge, especially with the traction that they're having right now with their shows and Suicide Squad and Black Widow and Shang-Chi and Eternals. Like, what's going on?
I'm going to ask you that question. Do you think, Scott, that it's because that they can have their own, like DC to great success, I believe, had their fandom event last pandemic, okay? They can do it their own now.
Yeah.
You know, and Marvel, which is kind of under Disney, right? So that makes me wonder, when are we going to get the press release that Disney is at a Comic-Con at home, because Disney has their own convention as well. It not only do I think it has ramifications for Comic-Con, but it also makes me wonder, when Comic-Con comes back, will they support it in a live atmosphere as well, or will Disney just basically say, nah, we have D23, we can do it ourselves, and guess what, Comic-Con, we control it, and we can do it better than you, and you charge way too much freaking money to do this, and we'll get better coverage because we kind of know what we're doing.
We'll pick the press that goes there. We'll pick the press. We'll pick the talent. We can do a production value based on our scale and the resources that we have. There's a lot of factors there. And huge. I agree that, I mean, you're starting even to see this with Netflix, right? They did a whole thing, a Geeked Week. You saw that? They did a whole thing where, all these fandom things.
Yep.
I think these networks streamers and content creators are big enough now. They don't need a third party. No. Their brand is strong. They can just do it themselves. Netflix can throw on a whole freaking week event and people will go. They proved it before with the Santa Monica takeover for Stranger Things, for the fair. The thing they're doing right now for Fear Street down in Los Angeles with the video store. Mm-hmm. They got this under control, and they know that they can control it. They can limit it. They can make it long as they want. Hell, even we didn't get to talk about this, but we can talk about it. But even Escape Room is doing their own version of an escape room in downtown Los Angeles. So you don't need these third parties anymore, because there's enough things where you can do a pop-up event that's going to get the same amount of attention as 1 2-hour panel at Comic-Con. And
and when they're doing it themselves, I don't know what they're budgeting these certain things at, right? But for Comic-Con, to go to Comic-Con, for a studio to go to Comic-Con, it was an investment, and it didn't pay off many times. They would promote a Hall H panel, and you got it filled up, and this is great. And then the movie comes out and it fizzles. Scott Pilgrim, I think, is a really good example.
It's always the best example they use. Yes.
Yep. And so they were so expensive. They were so controlling about everything, about what you did and how you did it. Now, I just think, especially when you're talking Disney, that has their own convention, they can do a better job and control it, and they can push the press out every single day. Hell, after every single panel that they have, and if it's rolled into a convention, you get all this other perpetual news coming out. It's going to be very interesting 2022 to see how Disney and Warner Brothers and other studios support Comic-Con. And I think Comic-Con, you folks have to start, you guys have to reinvent, you have to reevaluate how you start treating these studios, other than they're just cash cows who come in, because a lot of these studios too, Scott, they put in booths and stuff like that. So that's an additional cost, So I think Comic-Con, I think your reckoning is coming. I think much like the movie industry, you're going to have to reevaluate and change your ways and adapt. And you've got to be a little bit more flexible if you want, because they're providing you, Comic-Con, with content. If it wasn't for the studios, you'd be back to the Comic-Con of the 90s, which was nowhere near. Comic-Con.
Was it Comic-Con? Comic-Con.
It really was.
To a pop culture con.
Yep.
No. All right.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next Friday, and stay tuned to Twitter. We'll figure out a date hopefully next week to do a nice tribute to Richard Donner. Thank you very much.
Bye all.
See you all weekend.
Great day, Scott.
Have a nice weekend.
Great weekend, everybody. Bye.